Hi everyone, it's Shem. Here's another video on how to fit a tail tidy onto a Honda CRF250L or a CRF250 Rally. But before we start, I just wanted to give you a quick overview why I decided to do it. And there are a number of people out there that don't like the look of the standard tail on these bikes, and I'm not one of them. I actually don't mind it, and I think it's there for a reason, because it blocks quite a lot of debris flying off the rear wheel. So I appreciate that people change it for aesthetic reasons, but you know, that's not the reason for me. The reason for me is actually weight. I'm going through a bit of an exercise to shave as much weight as I can off this bike. Obviously it will never be a motocross bike, and I'm gonna make a separate video about the weight reduction, but fitting that tail tidy predominantly is because of its weight. I think that weighs something like 570 grams versus the stock, which is 1.2 kilograms or something like this. So I can shave half of the weight. And while I'm gonna be fitting this, I'm also gonna use this as an opportunity to replace the indicators with some LED ones. Again, I don't really mind these indicators. I don't mind the look of them, and actually I find it alright that they are quite flexible, so they don't smash when you crash the bike. However, you can shave about half kilogram on all four indicators as well. So again, it's quite a lot of weight when you start adding it up in different places. And this is the reason why I decided to do it. So, the tail tidy itself, it's a DRC one, it's a LED version for the bikes post 2017. The brake light and tail light is LED, as well as this registration plate light, so it looks alright. I mean, the finishing quality is okay, it's nothing to write home about. This is actually a steel construction, and this is some sort of aluminium alloy, because it's significantly lighter than this. I wish the whole light bracket was made out of that as opposed to steel, and it would have made it even lighter, but hey, you know, it is what it is. There are some, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but there are some like O-shaped plates welded onto here. That's to give indicator holes a bit more support. So you can use this plate with standard indicators, that stock indicators that come from your bike, or some different ones through that little hole over here. The only problem I have with that, it looks like that's been welded, spot welded here prior to painting, so there might be that the water actually goes into those grooves and it will start corroding from the inside, which is obviously not ideal. It would be nice if it was like either welded all the way around, or some sort of other method of sealing. I mean, obviously it's not a critical mounting point or anything like this, but still something to bear in mind if you ride your bike in wet conditions. In terms of cable, it doesn't come with any plug that would fit a factory Honda socket. It comes with some connectors that you could use. So that's it. Well, let's crack on with fitting it. Before we actually remove the tail, we want to remove that plastic first, just to get access to the cables to see what's what. So we're gonna start by removing those 4 M8 bolts. I think they are Allen key number 6 to get this off. Once these bolts are removed, you'd be able to leave the seat off, and then we're gonna have to pull those middle plastics apart. They sit in like a rubber O-ring in there, so you can just pull it without having to undo the bolt over here. The plastic is flexible enough to allow you to do it, and that will release the clip between the fairings over here, so we'll be able to actually remove that and get access to the cables. As a reminder, in case you didn't get it from the video, make sure that all of those bushes are removed before you pull that top plastic up. Otherwise you might be risking breaking the kind of U-shaped plastic hooks that hold it in place. So just make sure all of these are removed before you start pulling anything up. Okay, that's that. So let's have a look at the wires. I've managed to pull that sleeve back so you can hopefully see the connectors a little better. So let's start at what we've got over here. I've already measured everything with a multimeter, so I know what's what. I suppose I could have looked in the manual, but I wanted to be sure and on the safe side, so no harm in double checking things. So starting with the biggest connector here with 3 wires in it. That's the connector for the tail light together with the brake light, and that's the one that we're gonna be using for the DRC tail light. So if you look at the wires over here, you've got 3. So the full green wire, that's the negative. Then black wire is the positive for the tail light, and I suppose is that green and yellow, that's the stop light, positive for the stop light. Okay, so this harness covers tail light and a stop light. Then the next one here covers the registration plate light with just 2 wires in it. I don't think we're gonna have any need for that because looking at the DRC tail light, it's only got 3 wires in it, so it looks like the power for the registration plate light will be coming from the tail light power in this connector, because we've only got 3 wires here if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I think the tail light will be powering the registration plate light too. Okay, so these are the only 2 connectors that we have to worry about for the tail light and registration plate light. Then you've got 4 other connectors, and these are all for the indicators. So looking at the one over here, so this is the ride indicator. You can see the wire is coming over here, looping in here. And it splits up into 2 connectors, which is a bit weird because when I replaced the front indicators, this connector came with 2 wires. I don't know why they've done it like this, but well, it is what it is. So the blue wire, it's the positive for the ride indicator, and the green wire, that's always negative, and that's, in this case, that's negative for the ride indicator. And same story on the other side if you track this cable. So the orange is the positive for the left indicator, and then this green is a positive, it's a negative for the left indicator. Okay, so we're gonna have to figure out how to connect this, but for time being I'm gonna unplug all the cables and start disassembling the tail light so I can take the whole assembly off. The whole tail light assembly is held by these 4 bolts. There are 2 socket number 10 bolts here and 2 socket number 12 bolts over here. So I'm gonna remove all 4 of them, and that will allow me to take off the whole tail light assembly. The whole tail assembly is off the bike, so let's just put it on the scale and see what's the weight of it together with indicators. Okay, so that, including indicators and a bit of mode, is 1527 grams, so 1.5 kilograms round about there. Okay, so if we take that off and then put the DRC tail light together with the indicators that I bought off Amazon. They're only like a cheap LED indicators, but they're a lot lighter than the stock ones. Not a great quality, but hey, they will do for now. And if you check the weight of that, that's 655, yeah, about 655 grams. So we saved, what, round about 870, around 900 grams, which is, you know, this is actually a fair bit of weight saving, so I'm really pleased about it. So now let's go through a tedious job of soldering connectors and so on. One thing that I would like to do before we even start soldering anything is to make sure that I can feed those aftermarket indicators through that hole over here. And I've already checked and I can't. These are the M10 bolt. I think the hole is M9. So I'm gonna have to drill it out to M10, which is not ideal because there isn't a lot of meat over here. There's only about 2 millimeters, and I need to enlarge the hole by a millimeter. So yeah, I much prefer to do it off the bike than on the bike. So let me get a drill bit, and we'll do that first. And perhaps, because it's steel, put a bit of black hammerite in the hole, just to prevent it from corroding. As you might have noticed, I have removed the light just to avoid or to prevent it from getting damaged in case something goes wrong. Yeah, so that, as you can see, that's been drilled through, and there isn't much meat left over here, but hey, you know, it is what it is. It's only holding an indicator, so that should hopefully do. It probably could have been clamped better, but you know, for 2 holes I cannot be bothered to come up with anything else. I'm just gonna drill the second one now and take it from there. Now a little bit of a deburring. With holes deburred on both sides, I'm gonna put a drop of hammerite in there just to prevent it from corroding. It's probably not gonna do much, but there's no harm in doing that. And while this is drying, I'm gonna crack on with soldering the plugs and the rest of it. Let's start with trying to get that plug off. So to make things easier, I'm just going to remove the light bulb from the assembly. And now the idea is to basically unwrap these cables, cut them like halfway through so I can always solder them back if I want to, and try to solder that plug onto these cables. Just bear in mind the colors are different, so I've already checked that DRC light, and black is actually negative, red is the stop light positive, and yellow is the tail light positive, including the registration plate light. So that serves both. So we're gonna be connecting black to green, and then we're gonna be connecting yellow to black on here, and then we're gonna be connecting red to yellow and green cable on this plug. So I'm gonna put the camera aside and start doing it. One thing to notice is that DRC comes with quite a lot of cable, and really when you look at the cable length of that and this, and they're gonna be connecting in a similar place, you don't really need all of that. I've already tried it on the bike to give myself enough cable and maybe a little bit more, and to be honest, that length should be sufficient, which is let me just have a look quickly for the purpose so you know roughly where to cut. We're talking about what, 10, maybe 10 centimeters, and then obviously if you're gonna be soldering that, you're gonna have a little bit of length with the plug, so I think 10 centimeters is more than enough. So I'm gonna just chop it off here. Okay, roughly, if I ever wanted to reverse it back and use that connector again, I'm gonna just cut it, well, let's go for halfway through, like this. Okay, get rid of that, that can be put aside. And then now obviously open up this. Right, so let's start with negative. Okay, so we need to connect black to green. The shrink wrap is already not the shrink wrap, the heat shrink is already here. So let's start connecting. Right, definitely green. Yep. Okay. Okay, so the negative cable is soldered. So now we have to connect the tail light, which tail light and registration plate light, which in this case is a yellow cable, and we're gonna be connecting it to the black cable. Okay. Okay, so that's the yellow cable soldered. Okay, so we can just slide that shrink wrap and cover it. Okay. And then let's connect the stop light, which is our red cable. So we've got a cable soldered now. Better to be safe than sorry later. Let's just connect it to the bike and see if it actually works. I'm just gonna slide a insulation up so to make sure that nothing shorts while I'm trying it. The light is now connected to the bike using that connector. I'm gonna put the ignition on and just see what happens. So as you can see, the tail light is on and the registration plate light is on. So let me just press the brake and see if the stop light comes on. Yeah, so everything seems to be okay. No issues whatsoever, so I think we're all good. Right, I have now fitted the light onto the bracket. So yeah, that's securely mounted in the bracket. Next thing we need to do is determine how much of that indicator cable we need. It's probably too long as it is, and we're gonna be adding the connectors to it to use the stock connectors. So I'll probably chop both off somewhere here, so they will end up being similar length to that cable. Right, so I've got both indicators with shorter cables now, because to be honest they're rather cheap and they're not flexible. I'm not sure how long they're gonna stay on the bike for, especially if I crash. So I'm planning to use those little brass connectors just to connect them to the factory socket. So if I ever need to replace the indicators, I can just get a new indicator, solder or crimp the connectors on it and replace it without having to faff with soldering factory sockets and so on. So this is the reason why I'm doing it, and I've also done it with the indicators at the front, so it will be much easier for me to change them if I ever needed to. So I'm gonna strip off the wire then, and obviously we've got two types of connectors here, male and female, so I'm gonna put the opposite connectors on each cable, and the idea behind it is that you can never incorrectly connect the indicator because it's an LED one. You have to connect the polarity correctly, so by doing that you will always ensure that when you connect it, it's connected the right way. Right, we've got our connectors soldered and shrink wrapped. So time to do the indicators. Right, so this bit is done. Just to be safe, let's try to connect it and go to the bike and see if it works. Okay, obviously once I connect this, I'm gonna put a layer of tape around it just to give it additional protection. But for the time being, let's just connect it to the bike and see what's what. Right, so I now connected this to the bike. Orange goes on the left, blue goes on the right. I'm gonna put the ignition on and start with the indicator left. Okay, so we'll look at the left one. Yeah, that's fine. And we're gonna repeat that for the right. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And then we're gonna cancel that. And we're gonna try the hazard lights, and both indicators should be flashing. Yep. Cool. Okay, so that works as intended. I'm just gonna wrap it up, connect it to the tail light, and we should be able to start assembling the back of the bike. One thing to note, I've already replaced the indicator relay to accommodate the LED lights. If you're installing this LED lights, or at least this type of cheapos from the internet, you will most likely have to replace the relay. And because I've installed those indicators at the front already, my relay has been replaced. Otherwise, if you connect it to a normal relay, which is on the bike, they will be flashing too quickly. I think it's something to do with the resistance being a lot lower than resistance of a normal light bulb. So if you want to avoid that, and you're gonna be using the LED ones, the relay is behind the brake container, so you're gonna have to unscrew that, probably release one of the drain hoses from the airbox there, and there is a square relay box that you can just unplug and plug in the new one. I'm gonna put the link in the description of the relay that I purchased. It's only, again, it's a cheap relay somewhere from Amazon. I think I've paid a $5 or something like this for it, but it seems to be working well. So if you want to use the LED indicators, you will most likely have to do it. Okay, so we've got the cable sorted. And just a reminder, because it's really tight, you can put this through an M10 hole, but actually it was a bit of a pain. I had to put one behind another, so make sure you leave yourself enough cable here, or put them through before you actually connect them and start wrapping them in the insulation tape. So again, something to bear in mind. So remember, the orange is the left one, the blue is the right one. So before we actually put it on the bike, we're gonna have to install this protective plate. I think the idea is that that will protect the cables from sort of debris or elements and things like this. So it's gonna sit like this roughly, and then we're gonna fit that on the bike and put those 4 bolts at the top. So in order to attach that protective plate, they supplied two screws, and I think the protective plate's got a thread in those little inserts here, so we'll just tighten it, maybe put a drop of Loctite there, and see how it fits. But before I put the Loctite there, I'm gonna fit it on the bike just to see if I can actually put it on with the plate on. Okay, so that's the idea. Let's try it on the bike. Right, so if you look at it from this angle, providing you can see it very well, that plate nicely fits into where the original plastic used to fit. So it's good to keep it there. And then we're gonna tighten the 4 bolts at the top, and obviously you have to make sure that the cables are routed through properly and they are not clamped by anything. So yeah, I'm gonna start with the bolts. Manual states 4.5 Nm for all 4 bolts. This doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm gonna do it and put a little bit of Loctite on them just in case. Right, it looks like they had a bad day on the production line and the actual holes aren't properly aligned. So let's have a look here. So if I'll align 3 of these bolts, and the 4th one doesn't seem to be very well aligned and not to the point that I can put a bolt through, so I'm either gonna try to bend it slightly or perhaps just drill that hole a little bit larger. Again, not ideal. I was hoping it's gonna fit straight on. I've not even tried it, but that's, well, I suppose my mistake. I should have tried it before I attempted putting it on properly. So yeah, I'm gonna enlarge that hole slightly and then I'm gonna fit it back on the bike. The holes have been drilled. I've drilled M10s in here, so they are way larger than they need to be, but this will allow me to position the tail tidy however I want. So I'm gonna try to put it back on. Okay, yeah, align the holes here. So this is M12. I'm just gonna put the ball in like so. Okay. Not sure how well you can see it, but I'm gonna put a washer on because the hole is so large that it's not much smaller than the bolt's head. So just to spread the load a bit, I'm gonna put an extra washer on. And I'm gonna put a drop of Loctite in here. Right, so we have to torque this up. Again, manual states 4.5 Nm. Doesn't seem like a lot, but I've put a drop of Loctite there, so it should be fine. And remember that plug is for the registration plate light that we no longer need because it's powered from the tail light. So I will probably seal it off with something, maybe put a bit of a blue tag in here, or maybe some hot melt glue just to cover it off, but it's easy enough to remove if I ever need to. But let's test the lights. So grab the okay, so we can see a tail light is on. Okay, and if we put an indicator right, yeah, indicator left. Okay, and hazard lights. Yep, all good. Okay, so as you can see, yeah, the actual lip from that metal thing wraps over the plastic here, and it fits where the factory plastic would have sat, so that's all good. So yeah, let me seal the plug, and then after that I will put that rubber sleeving over the cables and wrap it down, and then I'm gonna tighten those two bolts, maybe put a drop of Loctite on them just to be safe, and then I'm gonna tighten the indicators and align them to make sure that they're in the straight line. Right, so we've got everything tightened up. Word of advice, I mean, tighten your indicators before you fit that plate properly, because then that gives you a bit more room to actually put your spanner on it, and maybe even do it on the bench before you actually put that thing on the bike. It's doable, but it's very tight, so yeah, not ideal. Probably would have been better to do it earlier, but hey, lesson learned. So everything is ready. Let's put the plastic cover back on and then fit the seat, and we'll fit the registration plate afterwards. It's now time to put the bolts back in. And just bear in mind, those M8 bolts come with bushes, and there are two sets of bushes here. There are slightly deeper ones and slightly shallower ones, and the shallower ones need to go at the front. Initially it might look like there's a lot of room in there, but actually that shallow bush is just the depth of that plastic fairing, and then it rests on another metal bush which is embedded into the seat. So yeah, when you put them back in, remember to put the shallow ones near the seat and the deeper bushes towards the back. And I've checked the new manual, which is the manual for year 2017 and forward, and it states 21 Newton meters for all of this. I think in my previous videos I've stated 20, so not a big difference, but yeah, I'm gonna torque them up to 21. As you can see, I have now fitted the registration plate, and I had to drill new holes because the mounting holes of the DRC tail tidy are different to the stock mounting holes. That's not a problem, but I'm also going to look at the different registration plates. The standard one is quite thick and heavy, so I'll have a look on the internet if I can find something perhaps more flexible. So this is how it looks like from the side. I mean, you can tell that it's you know, a lot cleaner than the stock one, but personally I'm not too keen on the look of it. I much prefer prefer the stock look, especially considering how big the registration plates are in the UK. Maybe in other countries when the plates aren't this big, it would look neater, but to me I prefer the look of the stock. I think that the angle of that is actually ridiculous. If I continue doing modifications like this, I'm gonna have to start wearing a jogging suit and putting my trousers in my socks. Personal choice. Visually it doesn't look very appealing to me, but in terms of weight you can't really argue with it. It's like over half kilogram of saving, so for that very purpose it's definitely worth doing. So overall, I'm pretty happy with everything. There's one more thing that I wanted to mention for those of you based in UK. In order to make that road legal, you need like a red reflector. So I'm gonna see if I can find one on eBay and just glue it to the registration plate. Otherwise, if you don't have it, your bike won't pass MOT and obviously won't be road legal. So yeah, that's it from me. If you have any questions or comments, write them down in the comment section below the video and I'll do my best to answer them. See you in the next video. Bye!